Welcome to Exhibition, an Xbox podcast, episode number 27. Of course, my name is Samuel Adams, and if you're watching the YouTube version of the show, you'll see I've got some decorations up and the holidays are in full swing. And it certainly is the most wonderful time of the year because we've got plenty of big game releases, and to pair well with that, a lot of people have time off for the holidays, so it's the perfect opportunity to dive into some new experiences, maybe check out that back catalog, enjoy some backward compatible games that have recently gotten some FPS boost maybe thrown in there. That's something I'll be doing. But in general, just a very exciting season. I love this time of year, and I hope that you are enjoying it as well. But before we dive into today's stories, which include Halo Infinite multiplayer progression talk, we're going to be discussing the future of Battlefield and the disastrous launch of Battlefield 2042, because that's been something that's been on my mind for the past few weeks. And of course, PlayStation's competitor to Game Pass, how can one forget about that? I do want to remind you, if you missed last week's show, I sat down with the developers behind Unpacking to discuss more about how the game came to be, the sound design, how robust that world is, and so if you did miss that interview, highly recommend you go back and check that one out. I'll have a link down below and a card right here on the YouTube video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. Let's start off the week with the biggest story from the world of Xbox, and that actually comes from the world of PlayStation, because it sounds like Sony is planning a new service to take on Xbox Game Pass, and this report comes from Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, and I would recommend you go read his entire article. It's behind a paywall, but if you don't frequent the site very often, you get a couple of freebies to check out, and his is certainly one that I used one of those freebies on. But in short, this is Codenamed Spartacus, and it will combine PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus together into one subscription service and deliver a library of both modern and legacy games for players to enjoy. And we're talking about everything from PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 all the way up to games from the PlayStation 4 and maybe PlayStation 5. We will see what comes of that. PlayStation 3, for some reason left out of the mix in this report, could come to fruition, but that could be a compatibility issue with what's going on with PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, which both of these consoles will likely have the subscription featured on them. This is all set and rumored to launch next spring, and the general reaction from the community, including from myself, is kind of an "it's about time." This is an obvious move because Game Pass is profitable. Phil Spencer has said that. And on top of that, it's opening up so many new experiences to players who will discover a new genre, a new franchise, a new game they might not have taken the time to check out because it could have not been something that was on their radar, or they might not have enjoyed it at all. I know this is true for myself. 2021 has been a year where I've played more games than ever before solely because of Game Pass. It's a fantastic discovery tool for games that I would never buy, never check out, probably wouldn't even download a demo of them, but I'll go ahead and install it because it's included with my subscription. A perfect example of this is one that I'm playing right now, Mortal Shell. I dove in, was not my cup of tea, but I wouldn't have tried it otherwise. Then I jumped over to Echo Generation, also downloaded on my Xbox Series X through Game Pass, kind of a turn-based combat game with some Stranger Things vibes mixed in there. I'm into it. Something that I'll probably end up playing on the cloud a good bit. And so those kind of experiences are a game changer because it opens me up to a whole new world of stuff. I know that I think Slay the Spire or another similar card game was included on this subscription service, and it's something that I might not have been interested in, but now absolutely am. And so PlayStation should expand this offering because it will bring more players into their ecosystem by making gaming more affordable. And I know there's also talk about them releasing a mobile controller for phones to encourage more people to play cloud-based games through PlayStation Now, and so that makes sense if this is lined up for a spring announcement and launch. So with all of this being considered, should you be upset about PlayStation coming out and making their own game subscription service? No, because these are fantastic for players. For me, right now, where I'm at in my life, I just bought a laptop. I got a Surface Laptop Go, a Microsoft product, and I play games on it through the cloud. I'm playing games through the cloud on the go, and I'm playing games on my console. I'm pretty satisfied with what Xbox is bringing, but Whenever you get these big next-gen God of War games, whenever the next Last of Us comes out or that multiplayer game comes out, whenever I start seeing new experiences that I really want to play, or games like Miles Morales and Demon Souls begin to drop in price a bit, that's whenever I'm going to say, hey, might go ahead and pick up a PlayStation 5. And when I do pick up one, it makes sense to have a PlayStation Game Pass that is just as accessible as Xbox Game Pass, and it tunes me into the ecosystem in the same way that Xbox Game Pass does. It engulfs you from day one, and it provides you an entire library of things to play. And so I think that having something like that for the PlayStation side of things is a genius move, and I would love to see more respect to the legacy experiences. You know, to have a PlayStation Game Pass subscription that includes games like Jak and Daxter, that includes these classic, iconic PlayStation franchises from back in the day, Sly Cooper even, that I might not be able to get easily now. It opens up an entirely new world of possibilities to who can play and experience these games. The biggest remaining question is, how does this bake into PlayStation's existing business model? Because Xbox has built the Series X and the Series S, financially speaking, around Game Pass being a part of the conversation. And so with PlayStation pivoting at the beginning of this generation, seemingly, and making a subscription, hypothetically, if this report is to be believed, a larger part of their ecosystem, what does that look like when it comes to including big releases on day one? Will we see God of War Ragnarok released on this subscription service on day one? Will it be a cherry pick kind of situation? Of course, right now, all Xbox Game Studios games do release on Game Pass on day one. Is that viable for Sony to do when it's likely that God of War would sell just as well on day one, no matter how they cut it? Horizon, the same exact scenario. And so these questions are yet to be answered, but the player counts would be monumental. And I think it especially makes sense in the context of them looking to a Halo and saying, we should do something with Killzone again, or we should build something new when it comes to a free-to-play multiplayer shooter or something that's super accessible like that. Making those kind of evolving experiences that get players in the door and get them invested is where these subscription services shine. I think about Destiny 2 being on Game Pass for a little stretch of time right there. That's something that got me in and hooked me for a small period of time, but with other options on the table, did not get me invested enough. But for those that are, that is the hook that gets them in, and PlayStation can certainly use this as a hook to get many, many more players in on some of their big upcoming games. So, at the risk of rambling, I want to go ahead and wrap up this part of today's podcast, but this just makes sense. Sony has been very strong in resisting this kind of subscription-based model, and PlayStation now has never been a truly viable competitor to Xbox Game Pass in any kind of way. It just isn't hitting the mark to really compete in the same playing field as Xbox Game Pass. And to combine PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now feels like the next obvious evolution. Will that come with a price hike? A big question. We will see what comes of that, but I'm already paying $15 a month for Xbox Game Pass, $15 a month for PlayStation Plus, mixed in with PlayStation Now and a new kind of subscription. Sounds reasonable to me. But in the comments section or over on twitter.com/JampactSam, let me know what you think. Very exciting, though, to see that finally PlayStation is looking to its competition to see what they're doing that is taking the attention off of PlayStation and putting it back on Xbox. Because for the longest time now, PlayStation has been the market leader, and they've gotten a little bit cocky. I mean, whenever you look at the PlayStation 5, yes, it's selling incredibly well, but a lot of people outside of those third-party games and outside of those free-to-play games like Warzone, there isn't that much launching in 2021, just not much happening. And of course, a lot of that's due to the COVID pandemic. But when you look at the world of Xbox, I mean, just looking at the surface level of Forza and Halo, that's a lot of gameplay right there. And on top of that, Game Pass keeps a new steady stream of games coming that people don't have to pay between $15 and $50 or $60 for. And so the value is just apparent. A lot of people are paying attention to that, and you have an Xbox console being the best selling on Black Friday. By default, arguably, but still, it's an Xbox console. So it's nice to see that Xbox winning is finally making PlayStation say, hey, maybe we should, finish the race before we look back and see who's behind us, that kind of thing. But I digress. Let me know what you think. Very excited, though, to see the PlayStation is doing this. And whenever I do eventually pick up a PlayStation 5, certainly will be on the roster of things to go ahead and purchase. Now let's dive into Battlefield 2042, because I've been spending a pretty good amount of time with the game. I've been enjoying the 10-hour free trial that is included through EA Play, which is looped into Xbox Game Pass, and the biggest public service announcement that I want to make is one that you're likely already aware of. The gameplay that you're seeing right here in this gameplay trailer, with air quotes all around that, is not what you get in the final product. There are elements of this included in there, but fundamentally the game is in a very poor state, and it has been since launch. Now, improvements have already come, but when it comes to destruction of environments, when it comes to these natural disasters, when it comes to overall quality of gameplay, it's just not hitting the mark to warrant spending $69.99 on that next generation version. With that being said, gameplay still feels tight at times. I love the way the guns play once you get used to them, but I don't want to spend $70 on this. I will wait for a sale. I will wait for it to drop in price, whatever it might be. We need to wait for fixes. We need to wait for content updates and something that really fleshes out the experience more, because we're missing a single-player campaign and we have a multiplayer experience that is fundamentally not working that well. That's just what it comes down to. But it sounds like this is a stepping stone for the franchise, and that is seen primarily through its specialist system, which replaces the class-based system that many longtime Battlefield fans like myself might be familiar with. There are no longer assault classes, or support classes, or recon classes. And for those not familiar with the franchise, those classes used to give you unique equipment that built this kind of synergy amongst a squad. Prior to Battlefield 2042, you would have a squad of 5 people. Let's say you've got 4 friends that want to team up. You could have somebody run assault. You could have somebody run recon. You know where I'm going with this. And you can kind of build out this squad that has specific elements that help you throughout the course of gameplay. But with 2042, specialists are more so hero-based, where you have one guy with a riot shield, for instance. You have a hacker that is able to hack equipment and that kind of thing. And while these abilities are cool, the wingsuit is also an example, if you've seen that in the promotional marketing material. While these are cool elements, they don't bring a lot to the gameplay, and they make me miss the old system. But it sounds like that's not going to be going away, because Battlefield is in the midst of a huge shakeup, with Electronic Arts actually putting Apex Legends boss in charge of the franchise. This report comes from Jay Peters over at The Verge, who is combining an interview with GameSpot and a lot of reports that have come from around the industry, on top of a blog post addressing the changes. Quote, EA is making a big change to the management of the Battlefield franchise by putting Vince Zampella, the CEO of Titanfall and Apex Legends maker Respawn Entertainment, in charge of the series, according to a GameSpot article published on Thursday. Alongside Zampella's new oversight of the franchise, Electronic Arts plans to build an interconnected Battlefield universe, according to GameSpot's interview. To help support that, EA is creating a new Seattle-based team focused on injecting more storytelling into the Battlefield universe, headed up by Halo veteran Marcus Leto, while Ripple Effect, which made Battlefield 2042's customizable portal mode, is working on a new Battlefield experience in the Battlefield 2042 universe, end quote. So that's pretty much the gist of the changes right there, and there's a lot more to the story here if you do want to read more on The Verge, because you have Battlefield 2042 hemorrhaging players, and you have a lot of issues that still need fixing. But in the midst of that, they're already pivoting towards the future, and of course, Marcus Leto, aka the father of Master Chief on Twitter, is joining the team to bring story back into Battlefield, which is weird to me, because seems strange to focus more on story in Battlefield when you just released a game that is completely entirely focused on multiplayer experiences and microtransactions without any kind of single player campaign for $70. I don't know if this is something that is a quick pivot. Probably not. And so it's weird to see this direction coming into the limelight. I would love, personally, to see a multiplayer experience that is a lot like Warzone, potentially free to play. That would be awesome. Where it continues to grow and evolve, and stories told in individual releases, potentially even small expansions. That would be something that I think I would totally be down for if you used 2042 as kind of like a Destiny 2, for example, where you have the base game that continues to get built on year after year. With that being said, more reports have come out that seem to suggest that the next Battlefield game will be a hero shooter instead of its traditional, large-scale Battlefield-style approach. And I'm sure that you can mix these two together, but this report comes from Richard Warren over at GameRant, who writes, "The launch of Battlefield 2042 has been divisive to say the least, though the future of the franchise could prove even more controversial. Supposedly, the next entry in the series will expand on the specialist system from Battlefield 2042, taking the form of a proper hero shooter like Overwatch or Valorant. While this is certainly a bold claim, it comes from the well-known insider Tom Henderson. In the lead-up to the release of Battlefield 2042, Henderson was proven right on a number of occasions. According to Henderson, the next Battlefield game is an enhancement of Battlefield 2042's Specialist. Specialists have proven to be one of the most controversial aspects of the new game, as they are a big departure from what heroes are used to. And again, this is the system where you have specific abilities that are given to each member of a squad, but ultimately it comes down to these just being strange additions to the gameplay rather than focusing on gunplay or traditional Battlefield-style approaches. And again, as I said, this game is pretty much a stepping stone into that new feature. This just feels like a conglomeration of ideas, and it sounds like Battlefield currently is experiencing what I would consider to be somewhat of an identity crisis. Because, in my opinion, what players want is to recapture the magic of Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. And what Battlefield 3, which I consider to be the pinnacle of the franchise, did well, is to capture warfare, capture modern warfare, capture realistic weapons, and capture realistic maps. That's all we want. I don't want a hero shooter. I don't want abilities. Didn't really need a wingsuit, if I'm being frank. I just want a good game. That's all I want. I don't need monstrous servers. I don't need all of these new bells and whistles that are coming and these new in-game systems. I don't want any of that. I just want a good multiplayer shooter. That's it. I'm getting frustrated with it. I think the community is getting frustrated with it. Now, in terms of this story, I don't personally think that's where Battlefield thrives. I know people talk about Irish in Battlefield 4. I know that that's a discussion that a lot of people have had, but if you told me to tell you the plot of any of these Battlefield games, I could not do it because the plots don't really matter. In fact, I'll go so far as to say the plot from Call of Duty 4 and Modern Warfare 2 that many consider to be, legendary in the world of first-person shooter campaigns, I don't really think they're that memorable either. That's just what it comes down to. First-person shooters thrive through good gunplay, good gameplay, good multiplayer experiences, and that's what Battlefield should focus on. But I digress. A lot of changes coming to Battlefield, and I think if anybody can helm this franchise, it's certainly Vince Zampella. I think that's a wise choice. And in terms of story, again, you've got Master Chief's daddy out here rocking it. So they certainly have the right team there. It's just Electronic Arts giving them the freedom to do what needs to be done to make something good. And again, these specialist systems and this hero shooter terminology being thrown around, that's all just rumor. So it could be changed and it could be a minor part of the game in general. But in my opinion, cut all that out, bring back classes, focus on making a Battlefield game. I don't want Valorant Battlefield. I don't want Overwatch Battlefield. I just want Battlefield. And whatever you need to do to make that happen, go for it. Now let's jump over and talk about another big first-person shooter from this season, Halo Infinite. Of course, we've been talking about this a lot on this show because it is an Xbox show, and Halo and Xbox go together like peanut butter and jelly. But Halo Infinite's campaign is launching later this week. That's massive, and congrats to the team at 343 for getting that bad boy to the finish line. It might have taken an extra year, but here we are. Now, with that being said, the multiplayer has been the talk of the town, trending multiple times, including as I record this on Twitter, and for good reason. It's great. and it has a lot of problems. So the gameplay, fundamentally, wonderful, but the progression system has a lot left to be desired. And so that has been changed in a big way. Not perfect, still plenty to be done, and in general, the solutions that 343 found ahead of launch and during the holiday season have felt more like workarounds than they have actual fixes. So, for those that don't know how the new XP system works, effectively you get a tiered based system that helps encourage players to come back day after day and complete daily missions based on completion of individual matches. And so, your first match of the day will earn you 300 XP, your second game gets you 200, your third game also gets you 200, fourth through sixth gets you 100 XP, and your seventh plus game gets you 50 XP. So, that builds on the original change of delivering 50 XP per match. This system is wonderful. You combine this with a double XP token, you are looking at some fast progression through that system, and it is wonderful. I know that I've catapulted up through the ranks. I think I hit 20 earlier this morning, and I don't play that often. And so this is something that has been a wonderful change, and it's one that I think is fantastic. And so I'm looking forward to seeing more, and I'm looking forward to seeing the official fixes here because they've just been using challenges to give players XP rather than actually implementing a decent fix and rebuilding this entire progression system, which takes time and which is coming. But with the campaign coming soon, and on top of that, with the holidays on the way, there just simply isn't enough time in the day to really implement it in the way that it deserves to be built. Now let's jump over and talk about playlist, because this is something that has been on my mind a lot. My big question: how did we have the launch of a Halo multiplayer experience and Slayer as a playlist was not an option? That is as fundamental to Halo as Halo is to Xbox. Slayer should have been in there, and that should have been a top priority. Instead, we have Quick Play, which is fine, and Slayer is mixed into Quick Play. But the issue with the playlist as they stand today is that you'll have people that just want to get kills. That's all they want to do. And then they're thrown into a game of, I don't know, capture the flag. They're not capturing any flag, and they certainly aren't defending any carriers, so they aren't playing the game in the way that needs to be played, and it frustrates other players. And so to have these divisions into individual playlists is a core update that needs to happen, and the good news is it is on the way. John Johnsick over on Twitter writes, quote, "Let's talk about Halo Infinite playlist. We've been reading your feedback, and we're working on plans to add Fiesta, Tactical Slayer, otherwise known as SWAT, and Free-for-All playlist as we speak. They won't land by December 8th, but the team is pushing to get them in before the end of the year. Our goal for events is to try new modes prior to adding the playlist. We'll monitor playlist health after the 3 additions above and adjust our offering if needed, but we're excited to make these updates before the holidays. This is just the start of the conversation with y'all. A social Slayer playlist with multiple variations is also in the works. We see this request the most, but we won't be able to get that one ready until after the holidays. We hope you can understand and enjoy the ones that make it in before the team takes a well-deserved break, and of course, on top of that, you can vote for them in the Game Awards. But these are good first steps. Of course, Fiesta was added a couple of weeks ago during the first big event, and then on top of that, SWAT is, again, fundamental to Halo, and Free-for-All is great for those that just want to get kills. So this is a great first step, and Slayer is on the way. I'd imagine it'll probably be added sometime around January. But Halo Infinite is ready to launch. The multiplayer side of things, between no campaign co-op at launch and this lack of polish on not the game, but the options. It seems like they certainly had to prioritize and triage what was going to get done for them to hit this date, even with that delay. And so I think that's justified. I think that's worth talking about. You know, the fact that they didn't have these fundamental parts of Halo's DNA at launch, but that doesn't make Halo Infinite any less good of a game for me. I've loved my time with the game. I think this progression, duct tape and nails kind of solution they've come up with works. And I think that it's something that I will continue to go back to daily to enjoy and to grind through specific games. You know, even if it's just those first 6 or 7 games that give me that additional bonus XP with a double XP token thrown in there. Absolutely, I'm down for that. And so I'm looking forward to it really expanding. And I would guess that probably by about March or April of next year, that's when you're really going to be seeing Infinite hit the sweet spot of a new progression system. And you're going to be seeing new playlists that are continuously circulating, a lot like what we saw with the Master Chief Collection. By all stretch of the imagination, though, Halo Infinite has had the most successful launch of the fall season when it comes to first-person shooters. The game plays wonderfully. The game looks good. The game brings a lot to the table in terms of offering. Those core fundamentals are there. It just needs a little bit more time to really iron out how you play the game versus just playing the game. Now let's move on and talk about some new games coming to Xbox Game Pass, but on top of that, for those that aren't Game Pass subscribers, the ID at Xbox Winter Game Event is coming soon, giving you a look at some new games that are coming in the distant or perhaps even in the near future. We'll talk about that more in a second. But in terms of new games coming to Game Pass, there is a bevy of options for you to enjoy during the holiday season, and it's important to get these games in here because so many people are unboxing an Xbox during the holidays, or they might have picked one up on Black Friday. Again, the Series S was the best seller for Black Friday. And so with so many people jumping on and wanting to play something through Game Pass, it's a key to get these new games added here. And while it's not the strongest month that I've ever seen between Halo Infinite and Aliens Fireteam Elite, which we'll talk about more in a moment, you already have a win. But Among Us and a Final Fantasy game and Stardew Valley, it's pretty solid if I do say so myself. But Megan Spur, community lead of Xbox Game Pass, writes, "It's the start of December and the gaming possibilities are infinite. We have a great group of games coming to you, including some day one gems you'll want to get your mice and controllers all powered up for. Let's jump in. On December 2nd, you have Anvil, Archvale, Final Fantasy 13-2, Lawn Mowing Simulator, Rubber Bandits, and Stardew Valley, along with Warhammer 40k Battle Sector. Huge variety of games across a huge variety of genres. That is something that I think is super impressive, and you can see those in that top list right there. But that's not all coming for the month. Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator comes on December 7th, followed closely by Halo Infinite, hitting cloud console and PC on December the 8th. One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 comes December 9th, and then Aliens Fireteam Elite drops on December the 14th, along with Among Us on console. Again, huge list of new experiences coming, and I think one that I want to focus on here, outside of Halo Infinite, of course, which is going to take the cake, and it's one I'll be diving into very soon, is Aliens Fireteam Elite. This is a game that essentially mixes that beauty of Call of Duty Zombies, where you can jump in with a squad and do some PvE action. That is what Game Pass thrives in. I think about Back 4 Blood, where I have left that game as a distant memory, and I never even squatted up with any friends because I don't normally play with a team. But I enjoyed my time with it. I enjoyed the few hours that I spent with it because it gave me the chance to jump in, and I would not have bought it otherwise. So I know that it's a good Left 4 Dead 2 spiritual successor. With Aliens Fireteam Elite, I wanted to have that kind of experience because I don't think that I'll spend dozens and dozens of hours with this game. But it still looks good, and now it's had an entire summer season to add some polish to it. And so I made a video months ago talking about this game, and I've wanted this to come to Game Pass for quite some time, and now that it's finally coming, I can get my friends together, and we can play Aliens Fireteam Elite. And again, I'm thinking about that scenario of Christmas morning, everyone's opening their Xboxes. Let's say you are in high school and you have an entire friend group that's getting an Xbox Series X, somebody got an S, somebody got their brother's old Xbox One, whatever it might be. You can all get together through Game Pass and play Aliens Fireteam Elite, slay some aliens, and have a great time doing it, all bundled in for the cost of a monthly subscription. That is fantastic. I mean, look at these screenshots. Looking pretty good if I do say so myself. So with all of that being said, again, very strong month. And I do want to mention also, there are going to be some ultimate perks, which include this past tense MA40 AR bundle coming on December the 8th. If you do want to check it out in Halo Infinite, very cool green looking skin there. And that also comes with a challenge swap and 4 2XP boost, or I should say 4 challenge swaps and 4 2XP boost, which again, you should use on 4 individual individual days as you jump on and play those first few matches. But Game Pass just keeps delivering lots of good stuff here for Ultimate subscribers as well. And I will also say, Stardew Valley is a big addition. My girlfriend was staying at my apartment for a couple of days, and she was at home chilling out. I was at work, and I came back. Stardew Valley was on. She fell in love with this game. She played it way back in the day, whenever it first launched a few years ago. And now that same love is captured here. And so it's awesome to have that kind of experience where she says, "Oh my God, Stardew Valley, it's here." That was something that I think, for me, proved the value of bringing this kind of game to the service. So again, I digress. If you do want to check out Game Pass games for the month, you have got plenty to dive into. But on top of that, the ID at Xbox Winter Game Demo event runs December the 7th through the 21st, which means it's starting in just a couple of days, and this gives you hands-on time with over 35 demos of upcoming unreleased games for the Xbox Series X and S and Xbox One. A few things to keep in mind. These are more so show floor demos as compared to traditional game demos, which means they are still works in progress. There are still plenty of things that are in the works for these games, so don't consider them to be necessarily reflective of the final product that you get. On top of that, these are going to be available for a limited time. Again, December 7th through December 21st. Very important to check them out between those time frames. And on top of that, give devs your feedback because these games are still so formative that it is your perfect opportunity to point out something that might be an issue or to point out a fundamental game mechanic that needs more work. But a couple of games coming include Loot River, Death Trash, Blacktail, The Tale of Biston, and Nobody Saves the World, with more to come as we get closer to this event. I would expect some kind of announcement on Monday when it comes to what you can play. But certainly a cool opportunity, and I played the ID at Xbox event earlier in the year whenever there was the spring or summer one, and I was really enjoying my time with some of these games, and it's good to be able to go hands-on and find something that, again, you might not normally be able to get your hands on just because you might not want to risk $20 on a game that hasn't really proven itself yet, but with the ID at Xbox winter event, you certainly can dive in and see if there's something that could be your next big favorite. So again, December 7th through the 21st, stay tuned to news.xbox.com or my Twitter feed, and I will certainly be sharing more when the event goes live. To round out today's show, let's talk about Xbox Cloud Gaming. Of course, this is looped in with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, but Tom Warren at The Verge reports that 20% of cloud gaming players only use touch controls in the Xbox ecosystem. That proves so much value here. And we're talking about a surprising stat, he says, that there are even individual games where 30% of players use touch controls exclusively. We're talking about Hades, New Super Lucky's Tale, Yakuza Like a Dragon, Scarlet Nexus, Dragon's Quest 11, Minecraft Dungeons, and Football Manager 2022 Xbox Edition. This is amazing, and we're talking about higher engagement on mobile devices through compatibility. And Xbox makes this easy by effectively dropping a GitHub overlay for developers to customize to their will. And it makes this such a simple move for developers to make and a simple choice to make that I look forward to seeing what the future of cloud gaming looks like because Xbox is doing it well. Whereas traditional cloud gaming might require a third-party controller, I've said it before, I don't want to carry an Xbox controller with me wherever I go. I want to be able to take my phone out of my back pocket when I sit down on a bus or at a park, and I want to be able to dive in without any kind of restriction and enjoy a game. And cloud gaming does that with these touch controls. I've personally spent time with ukulele, and I had a great time with those touch controls. And again, as long as you've got a good connection, you can get a solid experience. Not perfect, but solid. And so I think it's very interesting to see that 20% of Xbox Cloud Gaming players are only using touch controls because while I have been experimenting with it with a traditional Xbox controller, going forward, I can certainly see myself only playing these games that have cloud gaming compatibility because this is never going to be a device or a medium where I sit down and say, I want to play Halo Infinite via the cloud. I'm going to pick games that feel good on mobile that I can play for 20 minutes at a time during a lunch break. These are not huge gaming sessions that we're talking about. We're talking about something where I might run one dungeon in Minecraft Dungeons, or I might spend 10 minutes doing something. And so with that in mind, I think that touch controls make perfect sense, and to see it become such an accessible part of the development experience for Xbox developers, that is something that I think is super cool. So kudos to the Xbox team, and very interesting stat from Tom Warren over at The Verge. But that wraps up today's episode of Xhibition, an Xbox podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, drop me a like down below if you are watching on YouTube, or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. The show is uploaded every single Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on YouTube and on podcast services around the world, including Spotify and more. So wherever you might find the show, I do appreciate you listening. I've got a lot of cool conversations coming up in the weeks ahead. Of course, we will inevitably have some impressions of the Halo campaign. No spoilers, of course, never going to give spoilers on this show, but very excited for the week ahead. And we'll talk more when everything has settled down and we have some hands-on time with the big game of the year. But I'll talk to you next Sunday. And until then, have a fantastic week and keep on playing.